Welcome to Jerry and Woody's Horror Movie Reviews. Today we're going to show you some of the footage that we shot with our good friend, effects master, Barry Anderson. Barry's the art director over at Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. He's worked on such films as Day of the Dead, The Unholy, as well as Jeepers Creepers. Here's some footage for you.
After 6 months here in town, I saw an ad in the paper, said wax artist wanted, and I'm like, what's that? A candle maker? What is it? Didn't say anything about Ripley.
Just wax.
Said nothing. I noticed it, and I said something. My wife said, "Why don't you send in your resume? What do you got to lose?" So I'm like, "Well, all right, let's just do it." And then I get a reply back. It was from Ripley Entertainment Company. I'm like, "Oh my God, it is for wax figures. It's like my dream job, you know. I mean, Vincent Price, the whole wax thing, you know.
Right.
This is like my childhood dream." And of course, Ripley's, when I was a kid, I was always fascinated with Ripley's and shrunken heads and the unusual. So I was excited about that. And what I found out was they were preparing to open up a brand new art department here in Orlando. It hadn't even been built yet or open. And so when they contacted me, I had to go, I got called in for an interview, and at that point, I was hired as a figure maker, basically, and...
well, I mean, okay, as a figure maker, I mean, what does that entail? I mean, do you make like molds to put the lay the wax in? I mean, is that, it's like the arm here, is this a solid arm, or is that just...
This is actually a resin arm that simulates wax. It's a translucent resin. This is something I just, in the last couple of years, have developed working with materials that were unbreakable to... Because at one point, I used to, when we tried to make that out of wax, and then one bump or one rowdy person could come in and snap the fingers off. So I started experimenting with a lot of different materials in the last few years. But basically, my job role was to design new wax figures and make wax figures. I had an assistant that was hired, and so I was in charge of art direction on my figures. We had two teams, actually. There was another artist that was hired to do her wax figures, and she had an assistant and I had mine, and we were, in some cases we would work together, but we would get an assignment or take on the role of making our figures, and started that way. So it was an all brand new team. I'm the lone survivor of the original batch of people, but that goes back 13 and a half years. So Olga has been with us almost, I think, 12 and a half years. She's my costume designer. She's been here a long time, but I'm pretty fortunate. We've got a stable art department, but we do a lot of special openings so I tried to hook him up with our company just to, we have Eric, the Lizard Man, who's been at a number of appearances. He came into the art department. We did a casting off of him. So I'm hoping to make a wax figure out of them, actually.
Cool. That's actually what I wanted to ask, is like you see like Angelina Jolie and Catwoman. I mean, let's say Angelina Jolie. Okay, if you're going to do a cast or a figure of her,
yeah,
would you try and get her to come in and do a full body cast?
Well, I suggested that to people. That's for sure.
I mean, I could see that wouldn't suck.
Yeah, actually, what we usually do is we get a body double. We get a model with the same proportions and measurements, which still isn't a bad thing.
We need that.
Yeah, that's not a bad job. So we get an attractive model to come in and duplicate the body casting for that, because in most cases you would never be able to get an actor to go through that, although in case of Hairspray, I went over to John Travolta's and we did all that, put him through all that. Instead of getting a body double for him.
You actually had John Travolta.
Yeah, because he needed to have something that fit him exactly, and but that was a cool experience. anyways, but yes, this is this is typical stuff that actually I have flow charts to keep track of where everything is at because I have to have things completed by certain dates, and because we're doing multiple tasks at all times, this is a big part of this is the part of the job that sucks part, is trying to juggle so many projects and keep everybody happy and get all the deadlines done. You know, that is definitely
Prioritize and which has to go first, and make sure whatever's the easiest. Living, I understand.
yeah.
I can feel you.
So there's pressure. There is pressure, but you know what? It's somehow through time I've gotten used to that. And my wife said if it wasn't for you can work on a movie set. Some people jump out of airplanes. I just like putting myself on the spot. In this situation where it definitely is an adrenaline rush, and when things calm down and it's too quiet, then I create some other thing for myself.
He likes being put on the spot. Here he is with us.
Yeah, well, now this is, hey, come on, you want to come in the back and take a look at this place here? Show you, it's a little stuffy in here today. I guess they turned the air off or something in the weekend. Excuse the boxes here. We've had to pull some stuff out of the way. This is our giant wax vat. That is where we dip the bodies. Like the UPS man comes in and we need bodies. This is sort of like the Vincent Price.
Right.
It's overkill. We didn't need anything that big, but it just looked intimidating and it was cool. Yeah, that's right. But actually that's sectioned up into 3 sections, so I can do different colors of wax if I want. But honestly, it was, unless I'm doing large quantities of wax pours, I don't even, rarely do I even turn that on. I have a smaller wax pot here that for mixing up wax. And the wax is a blend of about 5 different types of waxes. I have a recipe that I've worked with, and I'll tint the wax depending on what it is that I'm doing and who it is that I'm making the wax of. Tint the wax. All around here are our inventory of molds. So with the rubber molds, we can pour resin in there, we can pour wax in there, so whatever if we choose for different materials, if it's wax, pour the wax. I'll let the wax set up in there for a few hours, and then I dump out the excess so I get a hollow pour. Let me see if I have an example here. There you go. So it's kind of like slushing wax into the mold for the most part. I pour it into the rubber mold, let it set up, and it starts to cool off around the edges until you get to a certain point. Let it, after a few hours,
So you're building up layer after layer.
I'll dump it out. Actually, it's just one, it's kind of just dump out the excess so I have a hollow casting. A lot of times we'll, in this case, his eyeballs actually are attached to the outside. This is the bug-eyed man here. But a lot of times we'll take wax and I'll cut the back of the head off if I can't get my arm up there to work, and I'll take a torch and I'll heat up this ball and melt from the inside to fit the glass eyeballs in. Here's a bag of eyes. So yeah, we go in there from the inside, set the eyes in place, get them where we want, and then we'll back it up with some wax and some fabric to lock the eyes in place. Or some cases, some of our figures have teeth, so we use a dental acrylic teeth, or we make our own teeth as well. Pretty cool. So we get all the, anything there's seam lines, anything that needs to be bubbles or whatever, we get this all cleaned up and ready, and then we make a socket to fit onto the body. So once we get if it's a piece that goes onto a body, sometimes we have busts that don't have body. We'll get it all ready, then it goes into hair, the hair gets punched into it, then it goes into paint. And I paint with layers of oil paints in translucent layers, and I'll build up on the wax with layers of oil paints.
Well, that about wraps up this episode of Jerry and Woody's Horror Movie Reviews. We'd like to thank Barry Anderson and everyone over at Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. Did a great job. Thanks for having us. And until next time, remember, if it's on my shelf, it should be on yours.
At the time, I'm not on camera, am I?
No.